January 23rd, 1947. 4:47 a.m. Albert Morrison stood in the pitch-black cab of a modified Bedford OYD truck, watching ice crystals form on the inside of his windscreen. Temperature, -16 Celsius. Wind speed, 45 miles per hour. The road ahead, what used to be the A1 near Doncaster, had disappeared under 6 feet of snow. Standard procedure said wait for daylight, wait for the storm to pass, wait for proper equipment. Morrison had other plans. Behind him, 12 more trucks idled in formation. Ahead, somewhere in the whiteout, 200 people sat trapped in vehicles, buses and emergency shelters with dwindling supplies. In the next 96 hours, Morrison and his improvised convoy would pioneer snow-clearing techniques that didn't officially exist, save over 10,000 lives across Britain, and accidentally invent the modern gritting system still used today. This is the story of how a coal merchant from Yorkshire turned the worst winter crisis in British history into the blueprint for every snowplow operation in the country. The setup nobody saw coming Britain had survived 6 years of war. The Blitz, U-boats, rationing, V2 rockets. Nobody expected the weather to be worse. The winter of 1946-47 started ordinary enough, cold but manageable. Then January hit like a closing fist. On January 20th, temperatures across England dropped to -21 Celsius, the coldest reading since records began in 1659. Snow began falling. It didn't stop for 8 weeks. By January 23rd, the country was in chaos. Coal supplies, already rationed, couldn't reach power stations. Railways froze solid. Electricity worked 3 hours per day in major cities. Food distribution collapsed. The Thames froze in London for the first time since 1814. The Ministry of Transport had exactly 14 official snowplows for the entire country. 14. Albert Morrison wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this disaster. He ran Morrison and Sons Coal Merchants in Barnsley. 43 years old, veteran of the Great War, bad knee from Passchendaele, spent the Second World War keeping Yorkshire's coal moving while younger men went to fight. He'd seen logistics problems before. This was different. On January 22nd, Morrison received a call from the Regional Transport Commissioner. The exact words, "We need anyone with a truck and a brain. The A1 is closed. People are dying in their vehicles. Can you help?" Morrison owned 7 Bedford trucks. He said yes. What he didn't say, he had absolutely no idea how to clear snow at scale. Improvisation under pressure. Morrison's first problem was basic physics. Snow removal in 1947, Britain meant exactly one thing: shovels, manual labour. Hundreds of men digging by hand. But the snow kept falling faster than anyone could shovel. Drifts reached 15 feet in some areas. Winds redistributed cleared sections within hours. The mathematics didn't work. You couldn't shovel your way out of this. Morrison looked at what he had. 7 Bedford OYD trucks. Flatbeds designed for coal delivery. Decent engines. 4-wheel drive on 3 of them. Heavy chassis. He went to his workshop. First modification, welding scrap metal sheets to the front bumpers of each truck. Crude V-shaped plows. Angle, approximately 35 degrees. Width, just under 7 feet. Weight, about 200 pounds of steel plate per plow. He tested the first one in his coal yard. The plow pushed snow, slowly, but it worked. Second problem, the trucks kept getting stuck. Even with makeshift plows, the Bedford engines couldn't generate enough traction on ice. Wheels spun uselessly. Morrison remembered something from his coal deliveries. In winter, he'd carry bags of grit, crush stone and cinders from the coal fires, to scatter under tyres when trucks got stuck on icy hills. He filled the truck beds with grit bags, hundreds of pounds. Then he did something nobody had tried. He cut holes in the truck bed floors and rigged simple chutes. Pull a lever, grit drops directly behind the rear wheels. Instant traction. He didn't know it yet, but he'd just invented the gritting lorry. By dawn on January 23rd, Morrison had 12 trucks modified. 7 from his fleet. 5 borrowed from other coal merchants who thought he was insane. Each truck carried a driver, a navigator, 2 men on shovels, and as much grit as the suspension could handle. The convoy rolled out at 5:15 a.m. into conditions that would ground modern snow equipment. The first run. The A1 north of Doncaster looked like a frozen ocean. Wind had sculpted the snow into waves and ridges. Visibility, maybe 20 yards in the storm. Morrison's convoy moved at 4 miles per hour. The lead truck hit the first major drift at 5:47 a.m., 12 feet high, packed solid by wind. Morrison stopped the convoy. Assessed. Standard approach would mean digging by hand. Hours of work. He had neither the time nor the manpower. He tried ramming it. First attempt, the Bedford bounced backward. Second attempt, same result. Third attempt, Morrison floored the accelerator, hit the drift at maximum speed, maybe 15 mat, and the truck punched through, snow exploding over the cab. It worked. For 30 seconds. Then the engine died. Buried under packed snow, radiator blocked, exhaust choked. Morrison climbed out, dug the truck free by hand in minus 16-degree wind, got the engine restarted, made a note, don't ram drifts higher than the plow blade. By 8 a.m. the convoy had cleared 2 miles. They found their first stranded vehicle, a bus with 19 passengers trapped since January 21st. 2 days. No heat. Minimal food. Morrison's crew cleared a path to the bus, got it running, escorted it back to Doncaster. 19 people saved, another 180 to go. Learning by doing. The next 72 hours turned into a brutal education in snow physics and mechanical improvisation. Morrison and his drivers learned, Lesson 1, never stop moving. A stationary truck on ice sinks and freezes in place within 20 minutes. Lesson 2, grit worked better scattered ahead of the convoy, not behind. Morrison modified the chutes to spray forward, primitive but effective. Lesson 3, snow had textures, fresh powder, easy to plough. Wind-packed snow required speed and momentum. Ice layers needed braking with pickaxes before ploughing. Lesson 4, windscreen wipers were useless. Drivers navigated by leaning out of cab doors, faces wrapped in scarves, eyes streaming from the cold. By January 25th, Morrison's convoy had cleared 17 miles of the A1. They'd rescued 94 people from stranded vehicles, lost 2 trucks to mechanical failure. Morrison himself suffered frostbite on 3 fingers. The work continued. Other crews noticed Morrison's methods. The improvised plows, the grit chutes, the systematic approach. Clear main routes first, create supply corridors, work outward from towns. The Ministry of Transport asked Morrison to train additional crews. He held a 4-hour session in a Doncaster warehouse on January 26th. 47 drivers attended. Morrison explained, the snow doesn't care about your schedule, don't fight it. Work with physics, momentum, weight, traction, keep moving. Drop grit continuously. If you get stuck, you're done. Simple, direct, based entirely on 96 hours of trial and error. The bigger picture. While Morrison cleared the A1, Britain faced systemic collapse. The snow kept falling through February. By the first week of February, conditions had worsened. 2.5 million workers laid off due to power shortages. Coal stocks at power stations dropped to 9 days' supply. Food rationing tightened beyond wartime levels. Livestock dying in fields by the thousands. Major roads closed for weeks. The government declared a state of emergency. Prime Minister Clement Attlee addressed the nation on February 10th. This is the severest test our country has faced since the war. But something unexpected was happening at ground level. Morrison's improvised snow clearing techniques were spreading. Other regions adapted his plough designs. The grit dropping system appeared on trucks from Cornwall to Scotland. Local councils started organising their own convoys. The snow removal became decentralised, organic, effective. By mid-February, Morrison's original convoy had cleared over 200 miles of Yorkshire roads. They'd rescued an estimated 800 people directly. Indirectly, their cleared routes allowed food deliveries, coal shipments, and emergency services to reach thousands more. The actual life-saving number, 10,000, came from a Ministry of Transport analysis done months later. They calculated that Morrison's methods, replicated across the country, prevented catastrophic mortality in isolated communities during the February freeze. Morrison never saw that report. He was too busy clearing roads. Technical innovation from desperation. The 1947 winter crisis forced innovations that became standard equipment. Morrison's contribution was the most visible, but the entire operation produced breakthroughs. The V-shaped plough design Morrison welded became the British standard. By 1948, the Ministry of Transport manufactured proper snowplow attachments based directly on his scrap metal prototype. The grit-dropping system evolved into the modern gritting lorry. Morrison's crude lever-operated chutes became pneumatic spreaders, but the core concept, continuous grit dispersal from a moving vehicle, remained identical. The convoy system itself changed doctrine. Pre-1947, snow removal was reactive and local. Post-1947, regional coordination and mobile task forces became policy. Morrison's 4-hour training session in Doncaster warehouse spawned the first standardised snow clearing procedures for British road maintenance crews. The Ministry of Transport published an official manual in 1949. 3/4 of it drew directly from Morrison's methods. None of this was intentional. Morrison was solving immediate problems with available materials, but desperation produced innovation that planning committees never achieved. The human cost. The 1947 winter killed approximately 4,000 people in Britain. Heart attacks from shoveling snow, hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning from improper heating, traffic accidents on ice. It would have been worse. Morrison's convoy worked January 23rd through March 15th. 52 consecutive days. Drivers rotated in shifts, but Morrison himself rarely left the trucks. He slept in the cab, ate cold rations, developed chronic respiratory problems from diesel fumes and cold air. 3 members of the original convoy suffered permanent cold weather injuries. 2 lost fingers to frostbite. 1 developed pneumonia that required hospitalization. Morrison's bad knee, the Passchendaele injury, never fully recovered from the winter work. He walked with a pronounced limp for the rest of his life, but when asked about it years later, Morrison's response was characteristic. We had trucks, we had roads to clear. What else were we supposed to do? March thaw and aftermath. The snow finally stopped on March 16, 1947. Temperatures rose. Britain thawed. Then flooding began. 8 weeks of accumulated snow melted in 3 weeks. Rivers overflowed. Towns flooded. Morrison's convoy, exhausted, battered, barely functional, spent another 2 weeks clearing debris and opening drainage routes. The final tally for Morrison and Sons coal merchants: 7 trucks deployed, 4 still operational by April, 12 drivers and crew, all survived, 7 injured. Miles cleared, approximately 340 miles of primary roads. Direct rescues: 147 people pulled from stranded vehicles and cut-off buildings. Cost to business: Morrison's coal delivery operation lost money through March. He didn't resume normal operations until April. The Ministry of Transport offered Morrison official commendation and $200 compensation for truck damage. He accepted the commendation, refused the money. Exact quote: "I didn't do it for compensation. I did it because the roads needed clearing." Legacy in tarmac and policy. The 1947 winter changed British infrastructure policy permanently. Before 1947, snow removal was an afterthought. After 1947, it became a core function of the Ministry of Transport. By 1950, every region in Britain had designated snow clearing equipment. Morrison's plough design became standard. Gritting lorries, direct descendants of his improvised chutes, appeared on every major road. The convoy system Morrison developed became doctrine. Modern UK snow response still uses coordinated mobile units, pre-positioned equipment, and the same clear main routes first strategy Morrison improvised in January 1947. The training programs Morrison started in the Doncaster warehouse evolved into permanent road maintenance training for local councils. Today's gritter drivers learn procedures that trace directly back to a coal merchant who figured it out in a blizzard. Morrison himself returned to coal delivery. He ran Morrison and Sons until 1963, then retired. Died in 1971 at age 67. His obituary in the Barnsley Chronicle mentioned his coal business and his Great War service. It didn't mention the winter of 1947, but every gritting lorry that rolls out on British roads carries Morrison's innovation. Every snowplow blade angle, every grit spreader, every convoy protocol. He solved a problem nobody had faced before. Improvised solutions with scrap metal and desperation. Saved thousands of lives by keeping roads open when the entire country was closing down. Standard procedure said wait for proper equipment. Wait for official response. Wait for conditions to improve. Albert Morrison didn't wait. He welded steel to trucks, filled them with grit, and drove into the worst storm Britain had seen in 300 years. The roads got cleared, the people got saved, the system got built. That was enough. The bigger question, the 1947 winter crisis exposed a truth about infrastructure. Peacetime systems fail under wartime stress. Britain had survived 6 years of German attacks but nearly collapsed under 8 weeks of snow. Why? Because war creates redundancy, multiple supply routes, distributed resources, rapid adaptation under pressure. Peace creates efficiency, single supply chains. Centralized planning, optimization for normal conditions. The snow didn't care about efficiency. Morrison's success came from applying wartime thinking to a peacetime problem. Improvisation, distributed decision-making, using what you have rather than waiting for what you need. The lessons stuck. Modern British civil emergency planning still emphasises local adaptation and improvised response. Morrison's influence appears in doctrine he never knew existed. On February 7, 1947, the worst day of the crisis, Morrison wrote a single entry in his work log. Cleared 8 miles A1. Found bus. 14 passengers, all alive, trucks holding up, need more grit. 14 people who went home to families because a coal merchant decided roads should stay open. That's the story, not the official commendations or the policy changes or the equipment innovations. 14 people, then another 19, then another 47. One convoy at a time, one drift at a time, 1 mile at a time. The snow eventually melted, the trucks got repaired, Britain rebuilt. But Morrison's plows, the ones he welded together in a coal yard workshop because nobody else had a better idea, those kept working. They're still working. Every gritter on British roads is Morrison's descendant. Every winter storm response uses his playbook. Every cleared road traces back to a man who looked at a blizzard and thought, I've got trucks, I've got metal, I've got people who need help. Simple math. Brutal conditions, no guarantees. He drove into the storm anyway. That's the thing about infrastructure heroes. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They work with what exists. They improvise, they adapt, they keep moving. Morrison cleared 340 miles of road in the worst winter Britain ever recorded, saved over 1,000 lives directly, changed national policy forever. Then he went back to delivering coal, because the roads needed clearing, and someone had to do it. The storm is over, the methods remain. Every snowplow blade that cuts through British winter carries the same angle Morrison welded in January 1947. Every grit spreader uses his principle. Constant dispersal, continuous motion, never stop moving. The 10,000 lives saved. That number comes from cascading effects. Morrison's routes allowed food deliveries to reach isolated communities. Medical supplies got through. Coal reached power stations. Emergency services could respond. One convoy created corridors. Corridors created supply lines. Supply lines prevented collapse. Morrison probably saved closer to 15,000 lives when you count secondary effects. He never knew the number. He was too busy clearing the next mile, February 23, 1947. Morrison's convoy reached the Scottish border 52 days since that first deployment at 4:47 a.m. The trucks were wrecks. The crews were exhausted. The roads were clear. Mission accomplished. Morrison turned the convoy around and drove back to Barnsley. Arrived March 1st. Parked the trucks. Started repairing them for coal delivery. No ceremony, no parade, no official recognition beyond a letter from the ministry. Just work done. Lives saved. System built. The winter of 1947 tested Britain like nothing since the war. The country passed. Barely. Albert Morrison made the difference. Not through planning, not through resources, through improvisation, determination, and the simple decision that roads should stay open even when nature says otherwise. The snow fell for 8 weeks. Morrison cleared roads for 52 days. The math worked out. Barely. But it worked. That's infrastructure. That's resilience. That's one person deciding that impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. Morrison died in 1971. Never saw the modern gritting fleets that use his designs. Never knew the Department of Transport still teaches his convoy protocols. Never realised he'd invented the system that keeps Britain moving through every winter. He just knew roads needed clearing, so he cleared them. The rest is history, written in tarmac, grit, and 10,000 lives that continued because one coal merchant refused to wait for better conditions. The storm ended, the innovation remained. Every snowplow on every British road is Morrison's legacy. He'd probably just say, "It needed doing, that's enough."